Hey, good morning, Sabbath School. Happy Sabbath. I don't know if any of you have noticed, but it's a freezing morning, so little Pinky is even happier than normal to be on my lap because the grass is a little bit too cold. Very cold. So, we're going to read chapter 10 of our book, Singers on the Sand, and this chapter is called Satu's Victory. If you didn't hear the last chapter, then I recommend you quickly go back and listen to it. It is on YouTube. Otherwise, I don't think this chapter is going to make a whole lot of sense to you. Anyway, here goes, Satu's victory. When Satu left the house of Guru Malla and ran down the hill toward the big teacher's house on the sand, he found a question rising in his mind. He sat down beside the path to think it over. This was to have been a counsel to arrange some way of driving the teacher away from Great Sangha, but it hadn't turned out that way. At least he had heard nothing of that sort. The whole object of the meeting seemed to centre on forcing him, the chief's son, to forsake the teaching of the holy book and follow Islam. Perhaps they would discuss other things after he left, but he lifted his eyes to the house on the hill and saw Tamar coming out the front door, his figure silhouetted against the lights inside Guru Malla's house. Without Tamar, Satu knew that the others would not make any important decisions. He knew that his father, the chief, held the witch doctor's opinion in great regard. Also, he feared Tamar's medicine. Chief Meriden wouldn't act on anything without advice from his witchman. Satu didn't want to see Tamar just now, and he would certainly take this trail down the hill. The boy leaned up and ran again until he came to the teacher's house, where he went in and took his place among the other worshippers who sat on mats in the large room. On this evening the big teacher taught them a grand new hymn. He explained to them that a great and good man had written both the words and the music more than 300 years ago, but the magic in it was strong, and right now the Christians on the island of Sangha needed the power of this song. The words began, "A mighty mountain is our God, a wall that will not falter." Satu reached for the majestic notes and the powerful words along with the others. The teacher's voice led them and the hymn filled the night. Satu felt his fears and doubts dissolve in the safety and assurance of the holy magic. After the meeting ended and the power of the song was still strong on him, the village people filed out the door, and Hans whispered to him, "Did they make a plan?" No plan," Satu smiled. "No plan at all. The only thing they did was try to persuade me to follow Islam." The big teacher came and laid a hand on each boy's shoulder. "Satu, there are many more heavy trials for you," he said. "Don't be afraid. God will hear your prayers and your songs, and he will save you for his kingdom. The thing you must do now is be kind to all of them. God is a God of love, not of fear and anger." Satu ran home. He paused a moment in front of Tamar's house. He could see the faint glimmer of the oil lamp under the closed door. He would like to know what Tamar thought about the words spoken in Guru Malla's house. He remembered the look on the witchman's house. He hesitated for a moment only, thinking perhaps he should go in and tell Tamar about the powerful new song and his own great joy and peace. He remembered what the big teacher had said, "God is pulling on Tamar's heart." He decided not to go in. It was already late and his father was sure to be angry. He hurried on home, crept into the house, surprised to find no one awake. In the dark he found his sleeping mat and lay down to sleep. In the night a sound aroused him. He raised up on his elbow. It sounded like a man sobbing. He listened for a long time, but the sound did not come again, and Satu felt sure he must have dreamed it. He lay down and went fast asleep. When he awakened, the morning had come. After he'd bathed and eaten and finished the task his mother required of him, he ran down to the beach. It was already mid-morning, and he found Hans busy making a sand village for Marta. He squatted down in the shade of the big coral rock where they played, and began to help arrange the sticks and shells and seaweed that Marta brought them. Old Gola came along the beach with his fish nets hung over his shoulder. He had headed for his fishing boat that lay with the others at the landing place. "Why do you go to fish in the middle of the day?" Satu asked the old man. "We did plan to go this evening," Gola answered. But we decided to go while the sun is high, because Guru Malla has told me that far out in the sea on a calm day like this we may find big gatherings of the flatfish. You know, those speckled ones that taste better than any others. Satu put down the stones and shells he was arranging. He was always eager to hear about new fish or new ways to catch fish. He listened to Gola's words. See, Gola pointed, Guru Malla will come with me to show us how to find fish and catch them. Satu looked up at the Islam teacher's house on the hill. He saw Guru Malla coming down the path. Why don't you come with us? Gola asked Satu. I'd have to ask my father. I've already asked him. Said he didn't care. He said you may go if you like. Satu looked at his friend. Will you let Hans go too? No, I think we'll have a full load with you. This boat isn't very big, and we may catch lots of fish. Gola turned towards the boat. Satu stood and looked at Hans for a moment, trying to make up his mind. Neither Gola nor Guru Malla had been very pleasant last night, but he remembered what the big teacher had said about being kind to all of them. He could play with Hans any day, and he didn't get a chance to go fishing often. This was special, too good to not go. This was special too. Going clear out to sea, and in daytime, he hoped they really would find some of the delicious flatfish. He ran after Gola and climbed into the boat. I will be back for singing tonight, he called back to Hans, in a loud voice. His friend stood up and waved. Satu was sure he had heard and understood him. Gola loosened the rattan thong that tied the boat, and they pushed out from the beach. The sea was quiet and calm, and the surface moved in long swells that never broke, and tiny ripples flashed along the green water. It was a perfect day for sailing. Although the breeze was so gentle, there was enough of it to fill the bark cloth sail, and it pulled them along at an easy roll. They must pass directly between the points of the high rock where Satu had his secret lookout perch, and white sandy strip of beach along the southern base of the volcano. From there both places looked very close. The smoking mouth of the Fire Mountain opened on the opposite or northern side, and the flow of molten rock streamed down that slope, so the volcano did not look so frightening from here. The noise of the thundering was louder. The mountain towered over the tiny boat, and the bursting and hissing noise sounded much too close. The sharp smell of its breath made him cough and shudder. He was glad they didn't have to go any closer. Out in the sea they hunted for fish, and sure enough, just as Guru Malla had promised, they did find gatherings of the flatfish. The two men threw the nets and again drew in scores of them. Satu helped them with the work, and by evening there was a fine catch of fish aboard Galu's boat. Satu was hungry. He knew how delicious those fish would taste, baked over coals in his mother's clay stove. He settled back in the boat, and the two men pulled toward home. The boy closed his eyes and dozed a little. Then he woke with a start. The sail was down, and both men bent over the puddles. He saw that Guru Malla, who guided the boat, was steering straight toward the southern side of the Fire Mountain. Why do you swing in so close? He asked. Guru Malla didn't answer. His face was set and stern. Satu turned to Gola. Isn't it dangerous to run so close to the Fire Mountain? Gola answered nothing. Now they were but a short distance from the curve of white sandy beach that lay like a thin waning moon between two of the southern buttresses of the mountain in the sea. The roar of continuing thunder, the hiss of water, and the sound of bursting flame drowned out all other noise. It was now impossible to shout loud enough to make anyone hear anything, and the boat lurched forward hard onto firm white sand. As it struck, Satu felt himself lifted in strong arms, tossed out into the shallow water near the beach. Before he could scramble to his feet or utter a cry of protest, Gula's boat was shoved off and was making for the landing place on Great Sangha, right in front of the teacher's house. Satu crawled out of the water onto the beach and stood there on the narrow strip of sand, too stunned for words. He looked after the boat. It was too far off to be overtaken, and now Gula hoisted the sail and the boat skimmed away on the land breeze. When Satu covered enough to scream out his terror, there was not a living thing to hear, and the thunder of the mountain mocked him. He sat down on the sand. The ground quaked beneath him. Deep under stones and over stones of thunder rumbled beneath the mountain and the sea. Even here the glow of flame that belched from the northern side blistered the opposite side, and the volcano cast a faint red glow through the gathered night. He thought of throwing himself into the sea, but it would do no good. He could only drown. Fine swimmer that he was, and the sharks might not let him do that. He had seen plenty of sharks this day. Never had he faced such terror before. Why had they done it? He remembered Guru Mullah's face and cruel eyes. He remembered something he had heard last night about defying Islam. He couldn't even remember that the Guru had finished the sentence. They must have planned it all after he left. Of course his father didn't know, or did he? He doubted whether Tamar knew. So this was the way men of Islam punished those who would not follow their commands. He shuddered again. So fierce the mountain ranged, so wild the noise and rocking thunder, and that Satu found it almost impossible to think. But he must think. Now, what would the big teacher do in such a circumstance as this? He would sing, of course. Satu opened his mouth and tried to sing, but no song could come out in this tempest of flame and noise. In his mind he did remember the words, the new song the teacher had taught them last night. A mighty mountain is our God, a wall that will not falter. Now, what kind of mountain could be more mighty than this volcano? Was God a greater mountain than this? A mighty mountain is our God. The words swept through his mind like a strong wind that cooled and quieted him. He remembered many things the big teacher had taught, from them the holy book of God's magic, but none of them swelled in his heart so near and so powerful as the song. Then Satu thought of Hans. Hans would expect him back for early worship. Would Hans see the fishing boat come to the landing? Would he run out to welcome him and find that he was not there? Hans would surely tell his father. Hans would surely tell the big teacher. Would do something. Surely he would do something. He shut his eyes and tried to see the teacher's white boat tied among the others at the landing. Then a dreadful thought struck him. The men would never admit they had thrown him ashore on the fire mountain. They would invent some lie. They would say he had fallen overboard and drowned. If Hans believed, if the big teacher believed, if his father and mother believed, then none of them would do anything at all, because it would be too late. They would all feel sorry, and in time they would forget. Slowly, the full meaning of his situation became clear to him. If he was here on the fire mountain without food or water, true, the jungle grew on the lower slopes of the volcano on this side, but no animals could live here. He remembered that even the birds no longer came. Back in his mind, a memory stirred of something he had heard from his father. Something had told Hans that long ago the men of Sangha had offered living sacrifices, men, women, and children, to the spirits of the volcano. Night blackened the whole world, but the volcano raged and shook like a living thing, and the boy who cowered on the narrow crescent of white sand looked across the water toward the shore and saw a light flicker on the beach. That would be the light of the big teacher's house. They must be gathering now to sing the songs. They would sing the new song again tonight. A mighty mountain is our God. Then Satu threw himself on the sand and lay with his face on the beach. It seemed to him that the acrid fumes of the mountain's breath were not so strong here, and Satu prayed, and he prayed often before, since Hans taught him, but now that he was all alone on his fearful mountain, the words burst from his heart, and he cried out to the God of heaven. He did not pray for help from the shore. He had given up all hope of that. He prayed for the strength to endure, and the perfect trust and power to sing out in his heart and honor and praise God he had chosen to worship. A convulsion of unusual violence shook the strip of sand where he lay, and under his outstretched hands the earth opened. A hissing, gushing noise filled his ears, and hot breath of fire blasted into his face. He drew back from the abyss. Then he felt a huge hand land on him, and a loud voice shouted in his ear above the thunder of the mountain. It was the voice of the teacher. And that's the end of the chapter. Well, that's a bit of a cliffhanger. Well, I hope you guys are ready to listen next week. I'll read more then. Have a happy Sabbath, guys.